Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear students. Today we will talk about chapter 13 from the well-known book Islamic Jurisprudence. Today's lecture is about menstruation and postnatal bleeding. The first thing we will talk about today, inshallah, it is menstruation. Allah exalted be He says, and they ask you about menstruation. Say it is harm. So keep away from wives during menstruation and do not approach them until they are pure, and when they have purified themselves, then come to them from where Allah has ordained for you. Indeed, Allah loves those who are constantly repentant and loves those who purify themselves. In fact, menstruation, as the scholars define it, it is the flow of a type of natural blood. So means the woman that have menstruation, she is a healthy woman, and the woman who does not have the menstruation, she is a sick woman. This is why scholars say, when they define it, they say it natural blood from the womb at specific times. This blood is habitually discharged every month for 6 or 7 days. And this is the most common because some women, they have less than this period, and some of them have more than that, like 11, 10 days, 12 days, some of them 4 to 5 days, but this is the most common, 6 to 7 days. We will talk about definitions of scholars about the period, what is the least time, what is the longest time for the menses period. And the period can be more or less than that. In other words, a woman's monthly period can be longer or shorter depending on the different nature of each woman as predetermined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Shafi'i scholars said that the least time period for the menstruation, it is 24 hours, a day and night. Less than the 24 hours, for example, 23 hours, it will not be considered as a menstruation. It will be as istihadah. We will talk about istihadah within a few minutes, inshallah. But as for the blood discharge from the womb, if she sees blood, that can't be considered as a menstruation unless it be 24 hours or more than that, according to the Shafi'i madhab and Hanbali madhab. And according to Hanafi madhab, they say that it has to be at least 27 hours, means 3 days. According to the Shafi'i madhab, as we said, it is 24 hours. And if blood discharging more than that, you can consider it as a menstruation blood. The maximum period for the menstruation is 15 days, as a consensus between the scholars almost. And any other blood after the 15 days, it will be considered as a istihadah. The difference between the istihadah and hayd, the menstruation, that the mustahadah, the woman that has istihadah, she is doing everything. She just has some rulings we will talk about also later. But she can do whatever she do in her normal times. But for the menstruation, you know, there is some specific rules. We will not talk about this in this class because most of you know it. For example, she does not perform prayers and fasting and so on. So we said that menstruation is 1 day, 24 hours, the least time. Less than that will be considered as istihadah, not hayd. After the 15th day will be considered as istihadah. So we have from 1 to 15 days for the hayd. One of the important notes that we want to say, if the discharge of a woman in a state of menstruation or postnatal bleeding stops before sunset, this is for the prayer, it is obligatory for her to perform both dhuhr, noon prayer, and the asr, afternoon prayers of the same day. And if the discharge stops before dawn, it is obligatory for her to perform both the Maghrib, sunset, and the Isha, night prayers of the same night. This is because the time of prayer for the latter is a permissible time of prayer for the former in case of a legal excuse. Also, on the other hand, if a woman starts discharging before she can perform an obligatory prayer at its specific time, for example, the dhuhr prayer, you have from dhuhr, adhan, call, up to the asr. So before asr, you did not pray at the beginning of the time, no problem. So you will have up to asr time. If she did not pray between this time, then afterwards, before asr prayer, blood start discharging, means that she now can't pray the Dhuhr prayer, although Asr has not called for the adhan yet, but she missed that prayer. She doesn't need to make up for that prayer. So not required to make up for such a prayer after the hair discharge stops. In this respect, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, the opinion of the Hanafi and Maliki schools is the most cogent, as they maintain that a woman is not required to make up for such a missed prayer after her discharge stops. This is because making up for such a prayer necessitates a new legal command, and there is none in this case. Her delay of prayer is based on a legal excuse, so she is not to blame, as the delay is not out of negligence. Another important thing we want to talk about is that sometimes a woman sees different color of blood. Once the menstrual blood stops discharging, a woman becomes pure and her menstrual period is deemed over. Okay, she must then take a ritual bath, after which she is allowed to do whatever acts of worship which were prohibited for her during the menstruation. After blood stops discharging, a woman does not have to be concerned about any secretion or yellowish discharge. How you know that menses has stopped or it's over? Scholars said there is two signs to recognize between the purity and impurity, the menses and not menses period. Either she sees the white discharge by using a piece of cotton in that area. Some females, they don't have this white discharge, so the dryness will be the sign for ending. And now she can take the ritual bath and afterwards do whatever she wants to do of the ibadah, worship. Sometimes there's some secretion or yellowish discharge. The most authentic opinion about this yellowish blood is as follows. If the yellowish blood comes continuously with the menses blood, this will be considered as a blood of menses. Okay? If there is a gap between these two, if there is a stop, then yellowish blood means she saw the white discharge, then afterwards she saw the yellowish blood, that means that yellowish blood is istihadah and it's not considered as haid because it has stopped with the sign of dryness or white discharge. So this yellowish blood is not to be considered as a haid, menstruation. But if it's continuous, there is no gap between this one, only the blood color changed to yellowish, then this will be considered as menstruation. We want to talk about the istihadah. This is the most important, and there are so many mistakes and so many misconceptions about this issue. Istihadah definition is an irregular vaginal bleeding other than menstruation caused by a vein. It's kind of sickness. As we said that menstruation is a natural blood, this one, the istihadah blood, is not natural. It is irregular vaginal bleeding. It's kind of sickness. The case of mustahadah means the woman which has istihadah. It's so confusing, as we said, for the blood of menstruation resembles that of istihadah. The question here is, since the mustahadah, the woman who has istihadah, she's considered pure, how can she distinguish between menstruation and bleeding of istihadah when her bleeding continuous and continuous all the time maybe? How can she distinguish them between menstruation and istihadah, bearing in mind that she is legally and ritually deemed pure in the latter case because she wants to pray? But how can she distinguish between these two types to know if she can pray or she cannot pray? In fact, there are 3 cases of mustahadah. Listen well and know about this case, because so many people, they don't know about this one, especially men, they don't know about this one. So this knowledge needs to be conveyed and spread between women and also men, because they can teach their wives and whoever they are responsible for. Number 1, when a woman used to have a stable regular menstruation period, she knows when her menstruation starts and when it ends. She knows the period 6 days or 7 days. For example, she knows that her period is 6 days only, and it starts from the first day of the month. So from the 1st to 6th of the month, this is her period. So having certain duration of menstrual period before she had the istihadah. Then afterwards, something happened to her, then she had istihadah. The blood is not stopping now. How can she know when is her istihadah? In such a case, a woman can distinguish between both states relying on her stable menstrual period. Means, if she is bleeding all the time, all the month, she can say, I remember myself that day 1st, my menstrual period starts, and it overs on the 6th. So each month, from 1st to 6th, she stops praying, fasting, and not doing this, all the related kind of worships. And after the 6th day, she do the ritual bath. Then afterwards, she prays, she fasting, reading Quran. She can go to the masjid according to her stable period. Previously, she know about this one, and although she's still bleeding, because this bleeding will not be considered as a hayd, menstruation blood. It will be a istihadah blood. Thus, such a woman can wait until her usual period ends, then deem any other bleeding as istihadah. What is the proof for this one? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said to Habiba in this regard, remain away from prayer equal to the length of time that your menstrual period used to prevent you. After that, of usual courses, bath yourself and perform prayer. Related by Imam Muslim. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said to Fatima bint Abu Hubaysh, this istihadah is from a blood vein, not usual menstruation, so when your real menstrual period begins, give up performing prayer. This is number 1. Number 2, when a woman does not have a regular menstrual period, but her bleeding is always distinguishable. Now we will go to another type of distinguishing. Now she has irregular menstruation period, sometimes from the 1st, sometimes from 4th, sometimes 6 days, sometimes 12 days. She has irregular menses, or she doesn't remember the period when it comes or how many days. Here we tell her, you have to distinguish the type of blood, because the type of the blood of menstruation is different. That blood is almost distinguishable. It is thick black blood, and it is not discharges like the istihadah, and it has some malodorous and some specific or distinguishable odors. Having the characteristic of menstruation blood, you know these things, you can distinguish between this type of blood and that type of blood. So as I said, such a woman is to consider the former kind of blood as that of her menstrual period, during which she gives up prayer and fasting, regards the other kind of blood as that of istihadah. The proof for that also, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said to Fatima bint Abu Hubaysh, when the menstruation blood comes, it is black blood that can be recognized. So when that comes, give up performing the prayer. But when a different type of blood comes, you can perform ablution and perform prayer. This hadith is related by Abu Dawood and An-Nisa'i. The third point and the last point, when a woman has neither a regular menstruation period nor distinguishable kind of blood, or she cannot distinguish the characteristics of blood, she doesn't know about her menses period and when it starts and when it stops, how many days. This is called, in fuqaha terminology and scholars of jurisprudence terminology, they call it the perplexed woman. She doesn't know anything about this matter. Such a woman must follow the prevalent womanly menstrual period. That means she sees her mother, her sister, her aunt, close relatives, and what is their normal period of time, maybe 6, 7, like this. She asks them, then she follow like them. She follow the prevalent womanly menstrual period, and then whatever discharge after this period as istihadah. The Prophet Muhammad said to Hamna bint Jahsh, this istihadah is a strike, harm caused by shaitan, so you should count 6 or 7 days for menstruation, then you should take a ritual bath. If you see that you have purified yourself, then perform prayer for 24 or 23 days and fast for this will be sufficient for you. So you should do as a woman do during their menstrual period. This hadith is related by the 5 compilers of hadith and deemed sahih, authentic hadith by Al-Tirmidhi. To sum up what we said previously, a woman with a stable, regular menstrual period distinguishes istihadah according to her habit. Number 2, a woman with a distinguishable blood depends on her own judgment and her ability to distinguish between her menstruation and istihadah. The third point, a woman that has neither a regular period nor distinguishable blood, it is considered 6 or 7 days a month and then take a ritual bath. These are the most important things that we wanted to talk about this issue. And thank you very much for listening. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.